Chapter 18. The Fall of Babylon, the Great Harlot. In this chapter there is depicted in a most vivid way the destruction of Babylon, the Great Harlot, which is accompanied on the one hand by the lamentations of the kings of the earth who had committed fornication with her, and of the merchants of the earth who had sold her various precious goods. On the other hand, it is accompanied by rejoicing in heaven because of the righteous judgment of God. Certain contemporary interpreters suppose that this Babylon will actually be some kind of immense city, a world center, the capital of the kingdom of Antichrist, which will be distinguished for its wealth and at the same time for the extreme corruption of its morals, which has generally been characteristic of large and wealthy cities. Chapter 18, verse 1. And after these things I see another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. Here is shown the brightness of the heavenly powers and their purity, several times more superior in radiance and beauty than the stars and their light. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verse 2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. About the Chaldean capital of Babylon, captured by Cyrus and the Persians, something similar was foretold by Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 13, verses 21 through 22, chapter 21, verse 9. That by reason of its utter desolation, it would be filled with wild beasts and unclean spirits. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verse 3. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And how did Babylon make the nations drink the wine of its fornication? It was their leader in all manner of lawlessness, and it sent gifts to those cities which were obedient, to their chiefs and rulers who were enemies of truth. Chapter 18, verses 4 and 5. And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Come out of her, my people, as it was spoken to Lot and Sodom. Escape for thy life. Genesis chapter 19, verse 17. And in Isaiah 52, chapter 52, verse 11. So it is said here, for one should avoid contact and cohabitation with those who offend God. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verse 6. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. This speaks of those who, although innocent, suffered here from the rulers of that city, and whose endurance of sorrows elicited a most cruel punishment of their tormentors. It may also indicate one's transition from one state to another, i.e., from one who is being punished to one who is a wholly punishing force. The chalice is called double either because the sinners and lawless will receive terrible punishments both here and in the future life, or because both the soul and body will suffer torments for their common deeds, or because sin will be punished not only through outward suffering, but even more so inwardly, through the conscience. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verse 7. How much she hath glorified herself, and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. If there is no fear of God in them, those living in complacency and glory are wont to say, I shall never be moved. Psalm 29, verse 6, Septuagint. So also does this city speak of itself. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verse 8. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. One day means either the suddenness and shortness of time in which from the sword, sores, and hunger, a wailing will arise from this city, which will be overtaken by destruction and consuming flames, or the course of that same day in which, according to the prophecy, it will suffer. When the enemies seize the city, one day will suffice to defeat the people through all manner of provocation and various forms of death. God is almighty to save those who please him, and likewise to punish unrepentant sinners. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verses 9 and 10. And the kings of the earth, who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her, and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Here we think kings of the earth indicates the rulers, just as the psalmist said of Jerusalem, the rulers gathered themselves together. Psalms chapter 2, verse 2, Septuagint. Of those who have forsaken the divine commandments, it is said that they will burst into weeping, looking at its desolation and listening to its burning, being terrified by the sudden change which occurred in such a short time. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verses 11 through 14. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more, the merchandise of gold and silver, and precious stones, and of pearls, and fine linen, and purple, and silk, and scarlet, and all thyine wood, and all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of most precious wood, and of brass, and iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and odors, and ointments, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beasts, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and slaves, and souls of men. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and godly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. Through these expressions it should be understood that no one will buy. We should re-examine and re-evaluate that which is traded in the cities and what articles and goods are acquired for excessive pleasure. The use of horses, chariots, and the bodies of men will be unnecessary. There will not be an enslaving free trade of men's souls. Neither will there be a return to the enjoyment of the previous prosperity and magnificence. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verses 15 through 17. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, that was clothed in fine linen, and purple, and scarlet, and decked with gold, and precious stones, and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster, and all the company in ships, and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off. Here attention is turned to the sufferings of this Babylon, the weeping over it indicating the great misfortune and frightful destiny which will punish the city, once the boast of royal favor. Chapter 18, verses 18 and 19. And cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. It is very possible that the sea, in a figurative sense, indicates the present life, as it is subject to constant agitation, and merchants are swimmers, like fish, amid the worldly agitation. The merchants of the worldwide Babylon, i.e., confusion, cf. Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. At the demise of the visible world will likewise suffer and sob inconsolably, both on account of being deprived of the pleasures of this present life, and also on account of the reproach of their conscience. St. Andrew chapter 55. The word heaven indicates here either angels or saints who dwell wherein. With these, the apostles and prophets are enjoined to rejoice, thus avenging those who were reproached or offended, or those who, however unsuccessful their preaching among the inhabitants of the aforementioned city, were often subject to dishonor, or those that were dispersed through all the earth and were slaughtered for the sake of God, as servants of his word. So also were the prophets killed by the Jews, and the apostles by the pagans, to whom they gave precedence in their preaching. They rejoice in the coming punishments, not with a perverse joy, but ardently desiring to cut off sin. Furthermore, these temporal punishments serve that there might be less suffering in the age to come. St. Andrew chapter 55. Chapter 18, verses 21 through 24. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians, and of pipers and trumpeters, shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman, of whatsoever craft he be, shall be found any more in thee. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. In the last verse of this chapter, there is indicated the suddenness of God's chastisement which will overtake this city. St. Andrew says that its perdition will occur just as swiftly as a millstone sinks into the sea. And this perdition will be so extraordinary that there will remain not a single trace of this city. This is indicated figuratively, and the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. In the final verse, there is indicated another reason for the destruction of Babylon, that in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. Scripture parallels in chapter 18. Chapter 18, verse 2. Isaiah chapter 13, verses 21 and 22. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there, and the wild beasts of the island shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Isaiah chapter 21, verse 9. And behold, he comes riding in a chariot and pair. And he answered and said, Babylon is fallen, and all her images and her idols have been crushed to the ground. Septuagint. Chapter 18, verse 4. Isaiah chapter 52, verse 11. Depart ye, depart, go out from thence, and touch not the unclean thing. Go ye out from the midst of her, separate yourselves, ye that bear the vessels of the Lord. Septuagint. Chapter 18, verse 19. Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. On this account its name was called Confusion, because that there the Lord confounded the languages of all the earth, and thence the Lord scattered upon them the face of all the earth. Septuagint.